Hi, I'm Ginny Rosenkrantz with the University of Maryland Extension. It's December. Okay, so why do I have a pumpkin here? Well, Halloween and Thanksgiving were just around the corner, but now it's time to say goodbye to fall and all the beautiful colors that it had and bring in other colors. So in December, what can we do to brighten up our holidays? There's a whole range of plants. Some you might think about using and some might be unusual. So going from the holly to the boxwood on Delmarva Gardens right here on Pack 14. I know, it looks just like Halloween or Thanksgiving, but both of those holidays have come and gone, and it's time for us to say goodbye to all of our beautiful fall colors. It's going to be hard when you have these gorgeous flowers and these awesome pumpkins. Look at this gorgeous warty pumpkin. I mean, who couldn't fall in love with that, with this beautiful, this handle is so cool. Look at this. After 2 months, it's still real good. And the Mexican hat, so colorful and such cool detail. And I love this little pumpkin. This is one of the decorator pumpkins, so it's kind of a blue color with the orange. And this little baby one is kind of almost a butter color. Now, this little guy is actually an edible acorn squash, but very colorful too. Because though, it's December, we're going to go out into our gardens and find out some beautiful colors, some greens, some reds, and we're going to take all these out and compost them. So join me. Let's go outside. You know, there's a lot of beautiful evergreens that will give your landscape color all winter long. And starting in December, we get to the point where sometimes it's gray and cloudy days, but we always have this spirit of, oh my gosh, it's December, perfect. It's the last month of the year and different kinds of celebrations. So you have to bring some green in, okay? So this is a yew. This is actually what they call a weeping English yew, and it is a dwarf, but dwarf means that it's like stays under 5 feet instead of being like 40 feet. So I'm 5 foot and it's just about there. But we can go ahead and prune it back, and anytime you go ahead and prune something like this, you're saying, okay, you can grow some more. It doesn't hurt this evergreen to be pruned this time of year. So what I would do if I was going to be making a wreath, I would grab some pieces about that size. This is maybe a little bit too big. It should be about my hand size or not. Sometimes people use clippers like that. So I would go ahead and get some that are kind of branched out like this one. I like this, really good. Put that together. Oh, this would be pretty too. There we go. And that's the beginning of the background of a wreath. This is also a really good evergreen to use in a flower arrangement. A lot of people don't think about that, but these plants, the yews, hold up so well. The color is a nice dark rich green. It stays a nice dark rich green all through the winter. And in a flower arrangement, it'll handle a good 2 to 3 weeks, which I think is fabulous. So this is a good start. Let's go see what else I have in the garden. Come on. Oh, now I love Nandina. Yes, this is not a native plant. Neither are the yews actually too, but they grow so vigorously. Could be one of the problems because this thing can take off. One of the common names is heavenly bamboo. And that should give you a hint on just how fast these things can spread and take over. Also, the berries are also very viable. Birds will eat them, and so they will spread that way too. So you do have to make up your mind how many of the Nandina you really want. There's also dwarf Nandinas, which are probably a better choice, and there's some beautiful ones that never do have berries. But that kind of defeats the purpose today. Because with this Nandina, as you see, it's taller than me. I have a lot of greenery that I can go ahead and cut, and it doesn't cost me anything. I don't have to go to the store to purchase this. So I'm going to just actually cut this down to here. I take a huge piece like that. And the reason why I did that is now I can go ahead and prune out the berries and save them to use for decorations. And then if I put the yews with the Nandina foliage, it looks fabulous. Look how nice that color looks. Nice shiny green to a dark green. One's more of a medium green. So these are things you guys can plant around your place and then harvest every December, or even during the rest of the year whenever you feel like you need to have some greenery. It's there, it grows, it's yours. Let me show you some other things you might not think about using. I think one of the coolest things about this particular plant here is its name. It's a false cypress, but the botanical name is Cypress ficifera. It's just a cool name. Anyways, this is a very slow growing evergreen, and I love having it here in the garden because everything else is basically going down for the winter nap. They're all dormant. We might have some daylilies that are sort of green, some iris that are sort of green, but for the most part, everything here in this garden is going to be browns. Nothing wrong with browns. Brown's a good color, lots of different shades of brown. But having a nice evergreen in the middle of all that just spotlights it and warms it up, actually. This is a neat plant too because it's dancing. If you take a look at the foliage, it's always twisting, and it just sort of looks like it's always in motion, moving here, moving there. And it's even the little, if you look at a very small part of it, it's all like fans, just dancing around, having fun in the garden. So I could go ahead and prune this and add this to wreaths or flower arrangements, but I would want to go ahead and use it for like smaller flower arrangements so you could actually see all the detail. Because this is a dwarf, it's very slow growing, I wouldn't want to take a huge chunk on it for another year or two. Then maybe I'll go ahead and get a little bit crazy and say, oh, okay, let's go ahead and take parts of you out. If you're going to take a part of it though, and I will go ahead and prune it, you want to go ahead and prune it down to about like that. There we go. And so you have this whole beautiful section right here. I would probably prune off some of this. Anytime you put a plant in water, you don't want to have the leaves in the water either, because the leaves will go ahead and start to rot. And as they do, they throw out bacteria, and that actually shortens the life of your flower arrangement. So whenever you're adding greens, you always want to make sure that you've got that all taken off. Okay, good. So now that would be a really good piece to add to a really nice flower arrangement. Or if I decided to go ahead and use these in a wreath, I could go ahead and use this like every third or fourth cluster of greens to give a little bit more detail. It's just such a beautiful, thick, gorgeous color. Again, green, love it. Okay, let's go see if I can find some more greens. Also has a nice smell. Now this is a plant that has got really gorgeous, dark green, shiny leaves. I mean, it's just known for the glossiness of the leaves. But the other thing I want you to see is, see how every tip has a spine. And these are really deterrents. I had a customer who wanted to go ahead and have a hedge that people wouldn't go through. And right away I thought about the Chinese holly, because nobody runs into this without ripping into something. These spines are lethal. So even though this is absolutely gorgeous and could be used in a lot of things, flower arrangements and wreaths, it's just a little too hard to work with. So I'm not even going to touch that. Let's go find something much easier to work with. I love this holly. Oh, look at the berries on that baby. Isn't she gorgeous? You know, hollies are really neat. A lot of plants have what they call perfect flowers, where you have the male and the female parts of the flower all on one flower. Hollies are different. They're like people. You could have male hollies, you could have female hollies. And the females are the ones that have the beautiful berries. They are so gorgeous. Now this one is called a Foster holly. And she is a really interesting, elegant cross between our native American holly and a native southern holly called Dahan. So we have the American holly and the Dahan holly, and they came up with this beautiful Foster holly. Absolutely gorgeous. Now these, if I prune this out, let me go ahead and hold this down because it's going to pop right back up again. There we go. I got like to prune it all the way back there. So this makes a really, really nice addition to a wreath if you wanted to. It's also great to use in flower arrangement. If you decide to use this in a wreath though, one of the first things you have to realize is these berries, as they dry out, in a wreath they will, they'll fall off. You don't want to have it so that it's a wreath that's on your front door, that every time you open and close the door, the berries fall off and then you track them into the house. If you're going to have a wreath that's going to be on a window that doesn't move, that would be the perfect place for this. And I would always add these as the last addition, the decorations, because they're so gorgeous. Now, using this indoors in a flower arrangement, this will stay beautiful for quite a while also. And because the leaves are so elegant and dainty and small, they're not big hunking leaves, it will lend itself to small arrangements as well as large arrangements. So I think it's really cool. Now I want to show you guys this. This is really cool because having this holly right here, and then behind me is a Nellies Stevens, and then behind that is a beautiful American hemlock, and then another gorgeous, that's a Foster holly too, and some others that I have there. This is a living hedge, and this is also a living windbreak. Behind me is the north and west part of our property. And so when the winter winds come, and they always come from the northwest, probably out of Canada or Mongolia, and it just comes out and it's so cold. This actually blocks a little bit of the wind, or it filters through, but most of the time it goes up and over it. So it does protect our house. So whenever you're building a house, or if you buy a new house, or you're buying an old house, you want to look at maybe having a shade tree that is going to be on the south or the southwest to give you shade in the later part of the afternoon. That will actually cool your house down and make your air conditioner run so much less. So that's going to save you money. But the other thing is, if you live out in the country, like I do, you want to have a hedge so that you can go ahead and block that cold northwest wind. Because if I didn't have it, my house would be so much colder. So not only does it give me beauty and gorgeous berries and color for the holidays, it also gives me a lot of warmth. Come, I want to introduce you to another holly. Now this holly is again an American-made holly, even though its parentage is not at all American. So this one right here is part English and part Chinese. Remember I was showing you the Chinese holly with those nasty little spines? Well, this one has little teeny spines, so it's not as nasty. But the foliage is nice, dark green, very, very glossy. And look at the berries. Are they not spectacular? So let me go ahead and take one of these out so we can go ahead and print it up a little bit. First of all, when I was talking about the parentage of this, there was a sea captain, that lived in either St. Michael's or Oxford, Maryland. And he had a love of horticulture as well as being a sea captain. He knew which one he could make money on, and it obviously wasn't horticulture. But he would sail to England, and he would sail to China, and he decided that he wanted to go ahead and see if he could take the beauty of both of those particular hollies and see if he could create something even better. So this baby is called Nellie R. Stevens, and it's named after his wife. The male is called Edward R. Stevens, named after himself. Isn't that cool? So even though that this is not an American holly by genetics, it is by birth, which is really cool. It's an American holly as well as a Maryland holly. Now, with something like this, I would probably use this in a flower arrangement. I go ahead and cut that off. You could go ahead and keep the green on top, or just trim this off and just have the berries, which is also very, very nice. Let me go ahead and get this little leaf off too. And then you have a whole bunch of berries. Now, the longer the berries stay on, sometimes the redder they will turn, but not all berries turn redder. Sometimes they sort of say like a yellow or orangey red, which is kind of fun too. The other thing as I wanted to show you is, remember how it was so tall and green on that? The new growth from this year was the part that was all green leaves. This is the area where the tree was able to mature enough to have flowers. So like all of us have to mature enough before we can have kids, even the holly has to mature at least a year before it can have berries, which is kind of cool. So we have a truly American and one born in America. Pretty cool. Let me show you some other really cool green plants. So this is a Canadian hemlock. And to be honest with you, they don't always thrive here on the Eastern Shore. These have been here for 40 years, and they were probably 10 years old when we got them, so they're at least 50 years old. And they're doing okay, but I think a lot of it is because we keep them mulched, and we water them once in a while, especially when you have a really bad drought like we did this year, where it was 90-degree temperatures for 6 weeks and no rain. Oh, that was so hard on all of our plants. But this guy decided to go ahead and make it through anyways. So I love the hemlock. It has gorgeous, glossy, dark green, almost a blue-green foliage, which is very dainty and elegant. And if you turn it over, The underside is a very light blue-green. So if you were going to make a wreath out of this, that would be really cool because you'd have the two colors. Unfortunately, this lasts much better in water than in a wreath. But the other thing that this is really cool, it has very tiny little cones. Aren't they adorable? So this would be fun to use if you're going to go ahead and do an arrangement that for a special occasion or just, you know, maybe a dinner party or just having friends over, and it's a real quick arrangement that is going to be out for maybe a couple of days. This would be a good choice because you're going to have the color and the texture plus the little cones, and it doesn't have to stay like for 3 or 4 weeks. Some flowers can actually last 3 to 4 weeks in a container with the right water and the right conditioners in them. This one, not so much. But for a short period of time, like a couple of days to a week, absolutely. And it makes a great windbreak for us, which is real cool. Let me share some more plants. This is another holly that was designed in the United States. It's actually a southern holly too. One of the common names of this is called an oak leaf holly because if I take off a leaf, it looks quite a lot like an oak. It also, to me, looks a lot like a holly leaf too. It has spines on it, but they're tiny. They're not really horrible. I still wouldn't go barefoot around this guy. Now, this is a female holly, but we don't have the male that is in its family history or genetics. So this little girl has never had berries. She has flowers, but never berries. But she's absolutely beautiful, nice, thick, rich green. So this makes a really wonderful addition to any wreath on the outside. And also flower arranging, really, really nice. You know, it's interesting when you look back in history, when winter became really, really cold, especially in Northern Europe, people were going out and collecting greens to bring in the color and the texture of summer. And they would collect the holly and the ivy. So this is a pretty cool holly to be collecting. So this is not really a holly at all. And actually this is a plant that was bred a lot to sort of replace the red-tip photinia that a lot of people in the South like to plant. We are southern enough that the red-tip photinia does thrive here on the Eastern Shore, but it gets a really nasty leaf spot disease, and that makes it very undesirable, especially if we have a really wet springtime. 2 years ago when everybody had waterfront property, everybody who had a red-tip photinia had a skeleton of a plant instead of one that had lots of leaves. This one is much more disease resistant. This is Camellia, and the leaves are smaller. They're very glossy, and there's always a little bit of red right at the base of the leaf, which I think just kind of catches the sunlight, and it makes it really nice in either a wreath or, which would be kind of fun, or again, it's really good for flower arrangements. The leaves are small enough that you could use it for small flower arrangements, but you can also, this is fast enough growing, you can go ahead and take a whole bunch of branches. And if I put this together with the hollies that I have, you can see how nicely they all go together. Isn't that lovely? Now I had talked to you guys about an English holly, so I'm going to introduce you to an English holly that I have. Join me. Now the English holly is a much slower growing holly than the Foster holly or the Nellies Stevens. And that's kind of an interesting thing to realize because you think, okay, I'll go ahead and plant them all at the same time and they'll all be the same size. Not really, unfortunately. I love this English holly. What I chose about this one is that I love the creamy white edges that they have on every single one of the leaves. You can see that it does have spines, but again, they're not really horrible spines. So this is the English holly. And the reason why the Nellies Stevens holly spines are not as horrible, even though they're large, just like the leaves of the Chinese holly, the spines are softer, just like the other parent, the English holly. What's interesting about this one right now is that I purchased this to have this beautiful, gorgeous cream edges on it. But if I go back a little bit, look at that. I've got this bright, bright green. Now this actually is spinier, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. And what's happening is this is reverting back to the original green with all these little spines because it has been such a very, very droughty year. So anytime the plant gets stressed, it says, well, I'm going to go ahead and go with the strongest part of my growth. And with this one, the strongest part is solid green instead of green with the cream. The green with the cream means that there's less chlorophyll, so that the plant is having to work harder to get as much energy. But if it goes solid green like this, it can actually work a little bit less hard and do a much better job of growing. However, if I don't cut this out, this entire plant will eventually become solid green. So I'm going to have to go every now and then through this plant and go, okay, there's some more of the green, evergreen. Let me go ahead and cut this out. Woo! And what I'm doing also is I'm creating areas where sunlight can get in, so it will never be too dense and it will never have too many disease issues because of that. So I still have a little bit more pruning to do, but I want to introduce you to another gorgeous green plant that a lot of people use for a lot of the holidays. So right back here is the English boxwood. And the English boxwood, sometimes, especially when it gets cold, it has a tendency to get a little bit more of a yellowy orange color, and that's okay. This one is naturally a very tight growing plant. So if I go ahead and take a piece out of it like this, there we go. You can't even see where I've taken it. But one of the things that I need to do to make this stay healthy is to go ahead and do some pruning, to go ahead and open it up. Otherwise, if I open it up all the way so you can see on the inside of it, you'll see that there's some green on the inside, but it can be too tight and all this can just die. If I go ahead and make small holes to let a little bit of sunlight filter through, then that'll actually make it a much healthier plant in the long run, which is really good. But this is a beautiful plant to use for wreaths as well as flower arrangements. Now, a lot of people don't want to use this as a flower arrangement because sometimes they feel that the leaves smell a little bit like cat pee. However, on a wreath, they're absolutely gorgeous. And these are so nice because you can handle them with your fingers. There's no spines on them. Solid green, really, really easy to work with. You can make a nice fat wreath very, very quickly. These are also really good and used in swags or kissing balls. It just depends on how many boxwoods you have. The English boxwood and the American boxwood, they both work really, really well for wreaths. The other thing is December is the perfect time to thin this out. So don't take the hedge trimmers and make a hedge prune it out like that. What you want to do is what I did. Here, let me go ahead and do it again. So here's an area right here. It's really, really thick. And I'm just going to go in and prune just that much there. And I'll go ahead and prune that much there. Woo! See how fast that is? And there's like little teeny holes. You really don't even notice it. I'll go ahead and prune this back a little bit too. Sometimes it's even hard to see what you're actually pruning out. There we go. So, little teeny holes. The little holes let sunlight in a little bit, but more important, they let air in. And the air will go ahead and dry out any kind of moisture that's hanging in there during the heat of summer. Remember how it gets hot and muggy here on the Eastern Shore? That makes it really easy for diseases to thrive on the inside of this. We don't want that. So by having little holes like that, not only do you get fabulous greens, so you can go ahead and do a wreath or a kissing ball or a swag or a flower arrangement, but you also make your boxwoods a lot healthier. So I think it's a win-win situation, especially on a gorgeous day like today. Let me show you one more plant. Now, not many people think about using a camellia as for flower arranging and for wreaths. The spring blooming camellia has very large leaves. They're nice and shiny and dark green. Well, this is the fall blooming camellia, and it has shiny green leaves, but the leaves are really tiny. Instead of being like 3 to 4 inches large, it's only about 1 inch large. And you can see that this is very, very cold tolerant. So this little bud, even though it's gotten frosted a couple times, is starting to open because today's a warm day. So the flowers don't last long in a flower arrangement, but the foliage is absolutely beautiful for it. So I could go ahead and prune it. Now, when you're pruning something, you want to remember that you don't want to just go ahead and cut it like this and leave a stump. You want to go ahead and cut it like that and then cut back into it like this to remove that little stump. That will heal so much easier on the plant, and also that will prevent, because it's going to heal easy, It's going to prevent any rot that could go into it. But this would be really easy to use for a wreath. Let me see if I could go ahead and cut it a little bit more. Okay. Put these together. That's not bad. Cut a little bit lower. Whenever you're trimming something to make it shorter, always trim it from the bottom like that as opposed to the top. You want this to be a little bit uneven on top, but if I went ahead and put that grouping together with some beautiful evergreens, you can grow white pine in the area, you can grow loblolly pine in the area. This would really give you a little bit more color and texture, and if one of the little flowers does open up, that's just awesome too. This is also, like I said, excellent to use in flower arrangements. So these are some really good ideas on evergreens that you can grow in your yard right here on the Delmarva Peninsula. You can buy them as small plants and let them grow. You can buy them as a little bit larger plants and just take a little bit more care to make sure that they stay healthy, especially when we have the drought. I do have one more plant to share with you. It is a holly, but it is what they call a deciduous holly. Deciduous means it's not an evergreen. It doesn't keep the leaves all through the winter. So that means all the leaves fall off. Right now, the leaves are just beginning to fall off because it's been kind of a mild fall. We've had some freezes, but there's a few leaves on, but I want to show you the berries because they're spectacular. Wow, isn't this spectacular? So this is a deciduous holly. As you see, the leaves are starting to fall off. They're doing a really good job of falling off now. And you can pick them off too. So if you're going to go ahead and do a flower arrangement right now, you can go ahead and pick up all the leaves, and all you have is the beautiful, beautiful berries. So I can go ahead and prune this right here. Finish taking off all the berries. Leaving the berries. What's really interesting about this particular holly is that if you decide to go ahead and bring it indoors and do an arrangement and not add water, it will actually survive for months because it just kind of goes dormant. But look at that, isn't that gorgeous? So this one is Ilex verticulata. It is a native holly. It likes really wet areas. So we had to choose an area that was a little bit low so that it could survive and thrive. I'm surprised at how fast they grow, but the thing is with these guys, you really should cut them back a little bit every 2 to 3 years so that you have new growth. The more new growth you have, the more berries you get. It just sort of makes sense. But this is beautiful. So this one is called, the common name, I love it, winterberry. So in the wintertime, when I come home, I see this little corner of my garden and it just blazes. It's just spectacular. So let's go ahead and take a look at all the different plants we've got and see what we can do with them. I like this one. Okay. I love that. Oh, I love the deciduous holly. Winterberry, it's so much beautiful when it's in berry, but when you add a little bit of evergreens, it just sparkles. So I hope you had fun joining me in the garden. We picked up a whole bunch of really cool plants like your evergreen your evergreen boxwoods. I love the fall blooming camellia because the foliage is so petite. And then of course something really funny like this little plant. It just smiles at me and as it dances. And then you can put them, in really cool containers like a little wine glass. It's kind of funky, or a very lovely container, or just a fun little ceramic container that you might have gotten when you were a kid. The whole idea is to go out into your garden and have fun. Pick whatever you want. Once you have it in your yard, it's yours for as long as you take care of it. So I hope you had fun in Delmarva Gardens. I hope you have fun on your holidays with your family and friends. Thanks for joining me for Delmarva Gardens right here on Pack 14.